We're back with a brand new series here on Top 5 Scary Videos. This is It Came From the 80's, a series where we examine the greatest horrors from the decade and why they became so iconic in the world of cinema. So what better place to begin than with the master of horror himself, Wes Craven, and his terrifying 80's classic, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Let's just jump right in. Released in 1984, A Nightmare on Elm Street is a slasher directed and written by Wes Craven himself, an iconic horror director famous for works such as The Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, and Swamp Thing. He had quite the impressive resume already before even stepping foot on Elm Street, the location of this terrifying tale. Now, in order to examine the film and how exactly it became such an iconic film, we must first know what it's about. A Nightmare on Elm Street is the first installment in a lengthy series and follows 4 teenagers living on one street in the fictitious town of Springwood, Ohio, who were invaded and killed in their dreams, and thus killed in reality, by a burnt killer with a bladed leather glove, Freddy Krueger. Freddy is introduced as a child killer with the aforementioned glove, which was crafted in a boiler room where he used to take his victims. He is eventually captured by a group of parents and cornered in the boiler room, dousing Freddy in gasoline and setting him ablaze, and thus burning him alive. However, while his body died, his spirit lived on in the dreams of a group of teenagers, more specifically the children of those who took his life. As opposed to most heroes of modern cinema, think Dirty Harry, Indiana Jones, even Rambo, Freddy is a villain, a truly despicable entity that conforms to nothing less than the ethos of hell itself. Yet, since 1984, he has become celebrated and the subject of popular rap songs by even Fat Boys and DJ Jazzy Jeff, even the Fresh Prince. So why is that? Well, from the off, there is something inherently terrifying about an entity that invades your dreams. Sleep is our solitude, and dreaming is something that is so uniquely ours. So to have someone or something invade that space and break down your walls with a bladed glove, well, that's absolutely horrifying. In a way, it feels as though Freddy's newfound hipness isn't a way of celebrating a killer, but instead diminishing the evil, and in turn, the fear, making the fiend far less frightening, because Freddy will always remain neither humorous nor heroic. Portrayed by Robert Englund, the actor once stated, I quote, "After all, Freddy is a child killer, a kind of modern monster that we have seen and heard a lot about in recent years, but in a way he's a symbol of even something worse. Although I don't play abstracts as an actor, I think that what Freddy really stands for is the idea of killing the future. He has no place there, and so he is killing it. He has an envy of youth, and when teenagers see these movies, I'm sure that's what really freaks them out and scares them. Even though they may not intellectualize it, they understand that's what Freddy is truly stalking, their future hopes. Initially, Krueger was intended to be a child molester, but Craven eventually characterized him as a child murderer to avoid being accused of exploiting highly publicized child molestation cases that were occurring around the same time. Director Wes Craven stated, I quote, "In a sense, Freddy stands for the worst of parenthood and adulthood, the dirty old man, the nasty father, and the adult who wants children to die rather than help them prosper. He's the boogeyman and the worst fear of children, the adult that's out to get them. He's a very primal figure, sort of like Kronos devouring his children, that evil, twisted, perverted father figure that wants to destroy and is able to get them at their most vulnerable moment, which is when they're asleep." Craven strove to differ Krueger from the rest of cinema's iconic villains, with the majority of them wearing masks, including Leatherface, Michael Myers, and Jason. Craven stated, I quote, "I wanted my villain to have a mask, but be able to talk and taunt and threaten, so I thought of him being burned and scarred. However, it is Freddy's glove that became the most iconic part of the character, with Craven finding that knives were far too common in horror movies, so he considered a glove with steak knives, thus creating the iconic weapon for our favorite villain." Now, A Nightmare on Elm Street contains many biographical elements from Wes Craven's own childhood, but don't fret, there was no entity lurking in his dreams. Instead, the movie was inspired by several newspaper articles printed in the LA Times in the 1970s about a group of Southeast Asian refugees who, after fleeing to the US, suffered disturbing nightmares and refused to sleep. Some of the men even died in their sleep soon after. Doctors called the strange phenomenon Asian death syndrome, which seemed to afflict men between between the ages of 19 and 57, and was believed to be sudden unexplained death syndrome or Brugada syndrome. However, that was just the start. The 1970s pop song Dreamweaver was what finished off the story for Craven, giving him not only a setting, but also a synthesizer riff for the movie soundtrack. Tracking back to Freddy, the villain was actually drawn from Craven's early life. One night, a young Craven saw an old man walking on the sidewalk outside the window of his home. The man stopped, glanced at Craven and walked off. This very small interaction served as the inspiration for Freddy Krueger. Now what's quite surprising is the sheer amount of studios that initially passed on the project, simply because of its similarity to Dreamscape, a film being produced by Paramount Pictures at the time. Universal Studios also passed, and in the midst of all the rejection and financial strain, Craven framed the letter on the wall of his office. However, finally the independent New Line Cinema Corporation stepped forward and agreed to produce the film. God bless. The film initially premiered in the US with a limited theatrical release on November 9, 1984, opening in 165 cinemas across the country and grossing $1.2 million during its opening weekend, instantly making it a commercial success. In total, the film made $25.5 million at the American box office and won a slew of awards in the process, and to this day it's considered one of the greatest horror movies of all time, resulting in 9 sequels, including Freddy's Revenge, Dream Warriors, The Dream Master, and even a Friday the 13th crossover in Freddy vs. Jason. It was pretty damn iconic. However, tracking back to the original film that started it all, of course, when you make a film, you can't please everyone, and you certainly can't please everyone when making a horror film. When the film was submitted to the Motion Picture Association of America film rating system, they required 2 cuts to grant it an R rating. The theatrical version was released with an R rating and 13 seconds of cuts. The uncut version wouldn't see the light of day in the United States until the 1996 release. However, all DVD, digital and Blu-ray releases use the R-rated theatrical version. The uncut version has yet to be released on a digital platform. A Nightmare on Elm Street was a dark, smart horror film and created an everlasting legacy in the horror genre that cannot be touched. I mean, this is a fact. People have tried. They even released 2010's Nightmare on Elm Street, which was mediocre, formulaic, and did not live up to its predecessor's legacy. It made money, yes, but it also crashed and burned in the process. And one of the many reasons for this was Robert Englund's departure after an irreplaceable performance as the franchise's icon. However, we're not discussing mediocrity here, we're discussing a masterpiece. The 1984 classic will forever remain one of the greatest pieces of cinema, and a trailblazer in the slasher genre, just behind Halloween of course. I mean, Freddy has less than 10 minutes of screen time in the first A Nightmare on Elm Street, stalking in the shadows, peeking out behind walls, and his sharp knives dragging across metal. The effectiveness of horror is what you don't see. If you need to show off your villain at any given opportunity, then you're failing before you even begin, and that's what makes Wes Craven an incredible director, and A Nightmare on Elm Street an 80s classic, because what scares us is simply going to sleep. Freddy wields unfathomable power, and he could literally be hiding anywhere. When you're asleep, he controls your reality, making no place in the world safe for you. Where are you supposed to hide if you can't even close your eyes? In the wrong hands, Freddy could be silly, but with the collaboration between Craven and Englund, we have something truly eerie and terrifying. Well, there we have it. What are your thoughts on our new series, It Came From the 80s? Which classic film would you like us to tackle next? Leave us all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below. If you haven't already, be sure to give this video a big thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss another scary vid. And until next time, see you later.